Hello, this is Mr. Mitchell. I have a video here about the research paper that we are going to do in class. The research paper that I'm expecting from you might not be as long as some of the research papers you may have done before or coming up in the future, but it is about the length of a normal essay, but it does have you including appropriate quotes that are supporting your claim. So we're going to treat this kind of like each of the paragraphs of a standard essay, and then we're going to talk about how we can get these quotes in here. First of all, you may notice that we do not have a title for this. I just have research paper, cashless society. Same thing, you will not be expected to have a title. This is the introductory paragraph, and whether you end up with the typical 5 paragraphs or not, an introductory paragraph is expected. In that introductory paragraph, of course, you have a thesis, which is usually the last sentence of the paragraph. In this case, it's about how a cashless society makes sense. So what do you have before you get to this thesis? Well, you have to lead up to it. If you have some kind of good statistic, if you have some kind of good clever story, this might be a good way to lead into it. In this case, the paper is tying in the coronavirus with how cashless society might make sense now. And you notice that we have some things that the Declaration of Independence had. We have ideas people will agree upon, like after the pandemic is over, how good thing everybody will be healthier and maybe we'll have more social equality. I mean, that's not a bad technique for you to use to get things that people would agree with in there with what you're really arguing for. It is also not a bad idea to have alliterations like summer social unrest. You just don't need to have too many of those things. You don't want to look like you're showing out, but you do want to look like you're having the right word for the right situation. So this is a little bit about the introductory paragraph. Why don't we go to the first body paragraph? And of course, a first body paragraph would have a topic sentence. It is often the first sentence, doesn't always have to be, but here it is. Convenience is the most obvious reason to trash the cash. I did put a rhyme in here, just like before with the alliteration. That shouldn't be overdone, but it's just if it is an appropriate time and the right wording, yeah, you can have that. And it's probably easier to read when you have alliterations and a rhyme or two such as that. In this paragraph, we have our first quote. It just happens to be that way. It doesn't always have to be in the first body paragraph. But here's our first quote. Notice we had a sentence on our own. For some, it has taken a pandemic to realize the benefits of digital transaction, and it just keeps going. People are using cards and contactless payments because they don't, and so on. So it has a fluid transition from our sentences to the quotes. Remember, you have put a quotation mark here. So all these arrows are pointing to this quote. Now, this is one where it interrupted the quote to give credit to the source, and that is often very well done if you have a sentence ahead of it. Don't try to split up a sentence. Try to make it at the end of a sentence. So it would have to touch anything. This is where a sentence would end, and it gives credit to the author, gives credit to the publication, to the date whenever it was made, and then it goes back into the next quotation area. It goes to there. Here you also have a rule of 3 down here at the bottom. It's amazing how many times the rule of 3 is actually in good writing. And we tried to have some imagery here, words like spark and antiquated. Usually things that are better word choices do have some imagery tied to it. A spark has a definite imagery tied to it. Let's look at another body paragraph. A less obvious reason to go cashless is that it would help reduce cash-based crime. Notice that I tied in with the more obvious. I put most obvious in this first body paragraph, and we have a transition to a less obvious. So notice having some kind of transition where it's connecting one paragraph to the next is usually a pretty good idea. And having the topic sentence right off the bat that the whole paragraph is about is a good idea too. Now here we have a quote. It doesn't always have to be the second sentence. It just happened to be here. Here we have a quote and we have an ellipsis. Remember we talked about these ellipses in class. An ellipsis is where you had taken out words. And it is okay to do that as long as you do not interrupt what the main idea is. And that's exactly what happened here. It did not take away the main idea. Just like before, I have interrupted it after a sentence. It's kind of in the middle. And I do want to point out that it's good to have sources that are reputable. For example, Forbes is a very common, very reputable money magazine. You'd rather have that than some blog somebody made. I tried here to underline uses of imagery and good word choice like fathom and dirty money and the tip of the iceberg. You definitely want to try to reread things to try to get that right word choice. Now, something I don't know if you've noticed here or not, but I used the sentence according to the U.S. Treasury, but I did not follow it with a quote. Yes, you can do that. I had to look up how many counterfeit bills were in circulation estimated, and it's about $70 million. Same thing with the illegally obtained money is about $800 billion. I had to look those up, but you don't have to put it in quotation marks. This is just giving credit to where you got that information because the U.S. Treasury would know, whereas I would just be taking a guess. So you kind of need to give them credit. When in doubt, give credit to your source if you're not sure. Take a look at the third body paragraph. Of course, it's going to have a topic sentence. Going cashless is a better economic fit for the government, business owner, and individual. Hey, there is also a rule of three in there. It's amazing how many times good writing will have rules of three in here. Also in this one, I have the arrows pointing to improving education and building highways. This is just like we had before. These are things that everybody can agree with. So you're not necessarily writing in about your topic all the time. You're connecting it with, in this case, it's money could be better spent on more productive pursuits like improving education and building highways rather than chasing down these counterfeiters. I have the quote right here starting with retailers, and this was one sentence from retailers all the way to bank. Notice I did not circle it, but I do have an ellipsis right here, and I did not have this in the middle. Oh, this should be a comma right here. And there we are. But I did have the credit, a 2019 Sharice Jones article in USA Today at the end because there really was no good place to split this up. So if there's no good place to split it up, put it at the beginning or the end. Here is the final paragraph, the concluding paragraph. Now the concluding paragraph, you've already said your best arguments. You've already given your best quotes. You definitely need to have your thesis restated, like now is the time to transition to a cashless economic system. But what do you have before that? Well, one thing you can have in a concluding paragraph is how you have the opposing opinion. Here you have a cashless society will be unjust to people who do not have a checking account. Yet, you then kind of have your counter argument. Same thing here. Making a cashless transition has a few challenges, but progress always does. So you're still having that slant of your opinion is correct, but you are acknowledging what critics would say is reasons not to have this, and you're kind of giving yourself a chance to rebuke those ideas. Looking through here, just like before, I put things that people would agree with. The people that joined forces to secure ventilators, and I tried to appeal to logic here. Tried to appeal to logic, because after all, this is your argument. You're arguing that your claim is correct, that a cashless economic system is best. So we're arguing. So you want to appeal to logic in your concluding paragraph as well as others. So what about your paper? Here's some key points I want you to have for your paper. We're looking for your claim, your evidence, and your argument. It is almost all about your argument. I mean, you're trying to put together a good argument for your claim. And you can have quotes that are bad quotes, but they're not going to help your argument. They're not good evidence. You're looking for quotes that support your claim, and you are arguing for your claim. Did you notice I had several quotes in here, but the whole thing wasn't a quote? You had, I guess this was about nearly a page and a half as far as typed in. However, you just had those three main quotes in it. You used the quotes where you saw it helped with the argument. I am going to ask that you include standard essay details like a thesis, like topic sentences, but you should also include parts of creative writing, such as the rule of three, alliteration, and word choice. You also must show that you can correctly and effectively put quotes in your paper. Hey, I hope you have learned a little bit about your expectations, well, my expectations for your research paper coming up. Feel free to refer back to this video and to ask me any questions in class or via email.